book friends! Today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing Yaa Gyasi's second novel, Transcendent Kingdom. Hi book friends! Welcome to Tea Critiques, aka it's your girl Teya, spelled T-E-Y-A. This is my first ever YouTube video. Pause for applause. And flip out the hair. I'm so excited to be a part of the YouTube / BookTube world, but I won't only be reviewing books. I love reading books. I love reading. It is such an important hobby to me, but I also enjoy movies, and specifically horror movies, so I will also be reviewing and discussing horror movies. So if you like books, if you like films, especially horror films, then please click the subscribe button down below so that you don't miss any of my videos. Also, if you see me looking down and you're wondering what I'm looking at, I write notes because, you know, your girl comes prepared and I don't want to miss anything, so don't mind that. Like I mentioned, today I'm going to be reviewing and discussing Yaa Gyasi's second novel, Transcendent Kingdom. I know a lot of people have read her first novel, Homegoing. I read that novel last summer and it quickly became one of my favorite books ever, and so you know I had to pick up her second book. What I will say is that this book is completely different from Homegoing in its voice, in its narrative structure, in its storytelling. Yaa Gyasi's got them skills, and she proves it through her ability to tell two completely but equally compelling stories. So I'm just going to start with a little summary of the novel, just so you guys can understand what the novel's about before I get into discussing some of the themes. This novel is about Gifty. She is the narrator. She is currently a 6-year PhD student in neuroscience, so she's very smart. Her experiments, in the most simplest sense, is basically her trying to come up with a way to cure addiction through her experiments with mice. In her past, so this novel focuses on her past and her present. In the past, her older brother Nana was a skilled athlete who ended up injuring himself and then became addicted to drugs and ended up overdosing. So I think that has to do with why she is focusing her scientific studies on trying to cure addiction. Her family immigrated from Ghana. She is the only one who was born in America. And so the novel really follows the struggles that they experienced being immigrants in America. Currently, and so after her older brother Nana dies of an overdose, her mother starts dealing with depression and suicidal tendencies, and currently she's living with Gifty in her apartment, basically immobile in her bed. So due to Gifty's trauma that she experienced in the past that still lingers and haunts her to this day, it sends her on a journey of self-discovery. That is the summary, but now I'm going to start with some of the things I struggled with in the novel. I'm going to say that I did love this novel. It's a fabulous novel, it's phenomenal, and I do recommend it, but there were some things that I did struggle with, so I'm just going to start with that. You know how there are some novels that grip you from the first page or the first chapter and you don't want to ever put it down? And then there are other novels that take some time to snuggle and get used to, and then once you do get into the flow of things, you don't want to put it down. So this novel is definitely the latter. I struggled to get into this novel, and I remember I read the first couple chapters, I wasn't digging it, so I put it down. It took me a whole nother week to actually pick it up again, and it was because I was like, you have to read this novel, you bought this novel, you gotta read it. So definitely once I started getting into it, it changed, my opinion of the novel changed, but at the beginning I did struggle. One of the reasons that I struggled was because there's a lot of movement in the novel. Time period jumps from past and present, there's narrative structural changes, you know, there's lots of exposition in the present and in the past, but then also there is passages that are just diary entries from when she was a child, and she uses her diary entries to talk to God. There's also passages that are just scientific studies and theories that she is explaining that do have a connection to the larger story, so I understand why they're there, but they definitely took me out of the novel and the story at times. And so basically these changes happen within, you know, paragraphs. So in one paragraph you can be in the past, and the next paragraph you can be in the present with her in her lab. The next paragraph could be a scientific study. The next paragraph could be a diary entry. And so there is a lot of movement, and that did take some time to get used to. Also, like, I'm really digging how this reflects in the light. So shimmery. Anyways, another reason that I struggled to get into the novel was the amount of exposition in the novel. I am a sucker for dialogue. I feel like dialogue gives readers a moment to breathe, and if there is just a lot of exposition, it could feel breathless for the reader. And I don't mean literally breathless, I just mean that I feel like if you're just having blocks and blocks of text, there's no moment to take a break. And so I feel like dialogue gives readers a moment to breathe, a moment to take a break from all of that text. I understand why there was so much exposition, because this is very much Gifty telling the story of her life, and so there's lots of memory, there's lots of recollection, and it did read sometimes as nonfiction or memoir, so I understand the need for all the exposition, but I just struggled with it at the beginning. So yeah. It did take me some time to get into the novel, but once I got into the novel, let me tell you, I fell in love with this novel. I didn't want to put it down, although there were times I had to, because there are a lot of difficult subjects and themes that are explored that I connected to. So it is a difficult book to read. It is very dense, and it is very tragic, and there are very difficult themes that are explored in the novel. So let's get into some of the themes. There's racism, there's immigration, there's addiction, there's suicide, there's mental illness, there's religion versus science. And so when I really started getting into the hard stuff, like I mentioned, I did have to put the book down at some points just to take a step back physically and digest what I've read and then get back to it on another day. I think that's important for your mental health. And if you're feeling like you're getting triggered or mentally affected by it, just put it down, take a moment, come back to it when you're in a better space. As someone who does struggle with anxiety on a day-to-day basis, and as someone who has struggled with depression, and as someone who does have family members who have struggled with addiction, I definitely connected to the themes in this novel, and so yes, it did take a toll on me sometimes, and I had to put it down. So in my opinion, this is not an easy read. It is dense, like I mentioned, and the themes are very dark and tragic at some points. And so to me, it's not necessarily like a beach book read, but I do believe that it's a great novel to read during a book club because there's so many things you can discuss. And let's get discussing. So this is about a family that moved from Ghana to America, like I mentioned, and I think that Gyasi does a really good job of exploring the effects of racism and how they take a toll on a family. In my opinion, I believe that racism is the root of all their problems. The effects of racism definitely take a toll on each of them, and it definitely changes the family forever. And I would love to get into that, but I feel like I would be giving away too many spoilers. But I will give one mini example in a second. What I want to say is that the effects of racism acts as like a snowball effect, where it like affects one person in the family and then it affects another person in the family, and so on and so on, and then tragedy ensues. The experiences and the effects of racism, there are some overt forms of racism, such as them being called the N-word, where it's really deliberate and blunt, and then there are covert forms of racism that you really need to like kind of read between the lines to understand and to connect to the larger story. And so like an example of that would be, the father who in Ghana was like a well-respected high status figure in his community, and then he comes to America and he is just another black man looking for a job, and his inability to find work definitely takes a toll on him. He starts to experience depression and melancholy for his homeland, and he ultimately makes a decision that affects the entire family and changes the course of their lives. So that's just one example. I'm not going to get any more into that so I don't give too much away. I feel like the story could definitely be read as a critique of America and how it treats, oppresses, neglects immigrants who come to America, specifically immigrants of color. It's also about how a family coming from a country, coming from a different place, coming to America thinking that it's the land of opportunities and that, you know, all their success and all their dreams are going to be met, and having to come to reality that, you know, they're in a country that is racist and oppressive, and they're going to have to navigate in a world that isn't as welcoming as they thought it would be. They also have to change what success means to them, and there's going to be a lot of struggles and hardships, and that definitely can take a toll on a family, and you can see how that happens in this novel. I also enjoyed the themes of religion and science. Although the passages in the novel where she's just describing scientific methods and theories did kind of take me out of the novel, I really appreciated the internal struggle that Gifty was going through in the novel. She grew up in a very religious household. She herself became highly religious. You know, God was like God became therapy and a safe space for her, and really saved her as a child. But as she grows up, it changes because she becomes more involved in science, and then she starts to struggle with her faith. Also, with losing her brother, she also struggles with her faith. But throughout the entire novel, she's constantly, you know, in between science and religion, and I really love that that Gifty is not set in stone in her beliefs. She's constantly challenging it, she's constantly navigating it, questioning it, and I love that. She's, you know, questioning, can I be a scientist and also believe in God? Is it really that black and white? Is it really that simple? The characterization of Gifty is phenomenal, so is the rest of the family. I feel like they're all fully realized human beings, and I think that Gyasi explores humanity beautifully in this novel and leaves a lot of questions for the readers to take with them after they finish reading the novel. The theme of addiction and mental illness is what was most compelling to me. As I've mentioned, I've very much connected to these themes. I felt this novel sink into my bones and really take a hold on me. Like I said, I had to put it down at some points and come back to it. I had to be in a certain mindset to read it, and I just really resonated with this novel. It is super tragic. It is very tragic and powerful and raw and traumatic, but it's also just a beautiful story. All of the issues and struggles and hardships really spoke to me, you know, her mother struggling with depression and suicide, and Gifty trying so hard to help her. Gifty, you know, dealing with the grief of losing her brother and putting that into her scientific experiments and literally trying to cure addiction. I can definitely relate to wishing that addiction was cured. Although I don't have the scientific background to ever try and experiment with that, but it was interesting to see how Gifty did that or tried to do that in her experiments. You know, also being in Nana's mindset and how he turned to drugs as a way to deal with issues he was facing and how that affected him and his family, and how his eventual overdose affected Gifty and her mother, and like how it led them to where they are now. Like I said, it's like a snowball effect, and I think it's just, you know, explored beautifully. So yes, like I mentioned, it is a tragic story, but it's also a beautiful story about family, about love, about loss, about hope, and about self-discovery and recovery. While reading it, you know, I mentioned I did get triggered a couple of times and I had to put the book down, and so it's just like a warning out to everybody out there who may be struggling with addiction or mental illness. You know, if you're reading this novel, you may feel that too, and so just be mindful of that. It's not a bad thing. It's definitely means that she's a wonderfully talented writer if she's able to affect me that much. I think that she's so talented and her storytelling is so compelling that it could really draw you in and affect you. So just be mindful of that. So down to the rating now. I think I did a good job of kind of like telling you guys why I love the novel so much and why I appreciated the themes that were explored and why I think that Yaa Gyasi is a masterful writer. Masterful? Is that a word? I just think that she's super talented is what I'm trying to say. And I'm honestly jealous of her ability to tell such a compelling story. So there was dust. Okay, so I'm going to give this novel a 4 to 5. The only reason why I'm not giving this novel a 5 to 5 is because of the reasons I mentioned in the beginning of the video. how I struggled to get into it, how long it took me to finally get into the flow of things. And because it is such a dense novel, it wasn't very easy to get through, if that makes sense. But that is the only reason why it's not getting that 5 out of 5. Other than that, love this novel. I must say it's a fantastic novel. I highly, highly recommend it. I'm so looking forward to her third novel, whenever that may be. And so yeah, I highly recommend it, like I mentioned 20 times. So if you've read this novel and you have your own opinions, or you have on what I've said, or on how you felt about the novel, please comment below. I'm definitely looking forward to creating some kind of connection with other readers in the world, because I love discussing novels and I love to get into conversations about what other people got from a novel that I've read as well. So if you have any opinions, any comments, please comment below. Please like the video, please subscribe. You know the routine. So bye, beautiful book friends.